In 2024, the Railway Recruitment Board received 2.5 crore applications for 90,000 positions. That's a success rate of 0.36%. To put this in perspective, getting into Harvard with its 3% acceptance rate is nearly 10 times easier than becoming a railway clerk in India. What drives 2.5 crore people, many with advanced degrees, to compete for positions that require only a Class 10 qualification? The answer reveals something fundamental about India's labor market, our collective psychology, and whether the pursuit of sarkari naukri represents rational behavior or a generational trap. For decades, the advice was simple: get a government job, security for life, pension, respect. And for previous generations, this advice made sense. The private sector was nascent. The state was the primary employer. A government position wasn't just a job, it was entry into the middle class. But the economy has transformed since 1991. Private sector employment has expanded massively. New industries have emerged. Alternative career paths exist that didn't before. Yet the obsession persists. According to CMIE data, the labor force participation rate among educated youth remains stubbornly low. Not because jobs don't exist, but because millions are voluntarily unemployed, preparing for government exams. You might think this is a story about unemployment. It's not. It's a story about rational economic behavior in an irrational market. Here's how we'll examine this. First, we'll look at the scale, the staggering numbers that define this competition. Then, we'll trace the historical and economic forces that created the obsession. We'll explore the psychology that sustains it. And finally, we'll build a decision framework to help you answer: should you stay in the queue, or is it time to leave? This isn't about whether government jobs are good or bad. It's about understanding when the pursuit becomes rational and when it becomes a trap. Let me start with a story that captures the entire system. In 2023, national media reported on a candidate with an MTech degree applying for a Group D railway position, essentially a peon role requiring only Class 10 education. This wasn't an isolated case. There are documented instances of PhDs, MBAs, and engineering graduates competing for office attendant positions. Your first instinct might be, this is desperation, unemployment. But here's what makes it remarkable. This is rational economic behavior. A Group D government employee, entry level, minimal qualifications, starts at approximately 25,000 to 30,000 rupees per month. This salary is inflation indexed. The position includes job security, defined benefits, and pension. In contrast, a fresh engineer from a Tier 3 college often faces starting salaries of 12,000 to 15,000 rupees. No job security, no benefits, high volatility. The security premium of the public sector essentially erases the skill premium of private education. Now let me show you the scale. According to UPSC annual reports, approximately 13 lakh candidates registered for the civil services examination in 2023. The number of positions available? Just over 1,000. That's a success rate of approximately 0.08%. But UPSC is the apex, the most competitive. Surely other exams are more accessible. According to Staff Selection Commission reports, SSC CGL received approximately 25 lakh applications for roughly 8,400 vacancies. Success rate? 0.3%. At this point, you might think, surely banking is more accessible. Let me show you the IBPS numbers. IBPS banking exams. 87 lakh registrations across various cadres for approximately 12,000 positions. And then there's the railway example I mentioned. 2.5 crore applications, 90,000 positions, for jobs that require basic education. There's another pattern worth noting. According to government data cited in the Economic Times, between 2017 and 2021, over 63% of candidates who cleared UPSC were engineers, many from premier institutions. When IIT and NIT graduates, trained for highly specialized technical roles, prefer generalist administrative positions, it signals something profound about relative value. The administrative premium, power, status, security, vastly outweighs the innovation premium in most private sector roles. Consider a pattern I've encountered in research forums and documented cases. A graduate from a state university, good academics, average college, applies for the State Public Service Commission. In states like Uttar Pradesh, the UPPSC received 5.7 lakh applications for 220 positions in a recent cycle. Success rate 0.04%. This aspirant prepares for 3 years, lives in a coaching hub, spends 2 to 3 lakh rupees on fees, materials, living expenses, forgoes approximately 15 to 20 lakh rupees in potential earnings during this period. If successful, starting salary around 50,000 to 60,000 rupees monthly, with clear progression, pension, and lifetime security. If unsuccessful after multiple attempts, they've spent their prime employable years developing skills, rote memorization, procedural knowledge, that have limited transfer value in the corporate market. This is the gamble, and understanding why millions take it requires examining what created this situation. In 1863, Satyendranath Tagore became the first Indian to join the Indian Civil Service. That job was so powerful, so prestigious, that it survived the end of an empire. Under British rule, the ICS represented the pinnacle of prestige and power. For Indians, it was the rare avenue to authority in a colonized society. Post-independence, this legacy continued. The Nehruvian model expanded the state through 5-year plans. Public sector enterprises became engines of development. Government jobs offered security, pensions, and social status in a nascent economy with limited private opportunities. From 1947 to 1991, the License Raj period, the government wasn't just an employer, it was the gatekeeper of opportunity. Starting a business required navigating a labyrinth of permits. The private sector was constrained by regulation. Government roles controlled allocation of resources, licenses, contracts. In this environment, a government job wasn't merely stable employment. It was access to power in a system where bureaucratic discretion determined outcomes. Then came 1991, economic liberalization. The License Raj was dismantled. Peak tariffs dropped from 355% to 50%. The private sector expanded. GDP growth accelerated to 6 to 7% annually. Logic suggests that as the private sector grew, the relative attractiveness of government employment should have declined. Instead, the opposite happened. Several factors explain this paradox. India's post-liberalization growth was capital-intensive. It created opportunities in IT and finance for the top 10%. It provided subsistence work in construction and informal sectors for the bottom 50%. But it failed to create a broad base of stable middle-class jobs, the kind that characterized manufacturing-led growth in China and East Asia. The government sector remained one of the few sources of such positions. While private sector job creation stagnated for the middle, the government actively increased the value of its own positions. The fifth, 1996, sixth, 2006, and seventh, 2016, pay commissions significantly raised public sector salaries. At entry levels, Group C and D, government wages became substantially higher than private market wages for comparable skills. Unlike private salaries subject to market cycles, government compensation is indexed to inflation through dearness allowance. This creates a real wage shield that becomes especially valuable during periods of economic volatility. According to research by economists Shruti Rajagopalan and Alex Tabarrok, the private sector failed to offer what economists call dignity, stable contracts, social security, predictable progression. For a Tier 3 college graduate, the private sector often means 12-hour shifts, no written contract, arbitrary termination, and no benefits. The government sector, even at lower levels, means defined hours, job security, and respect. Now, some would argue that after 30+ years of liberalization, this preference should have updated. But consider 2020, the pandemic. Private sector salaries were cut. Layoffs were widespread. Companies faced uncertainty. Government employees? Full salaries, full benefits, no terminations. This lived experience confirmed what families had intuited. In a crisis, the private sector abandons you. The state does not. The preference isn't outdated. It's continuously reinforced by economic volatility. But economic safety explains why they start. It doesn't explain why they stay for 5, 6, 7 years, long after the math says they should quit. To understand that, we have to look at the trap. Here's the paradox nobody talks about. The pursuit is simultaneously rational for each individual and catastrophic for the collective. Economists have a name for this: rent-seeking. It means spending resources to capture existing wealth without creating new wealth. Here's the calculation. A government job pays 50,000 rupees a month. The same work in the private sector, 20,000 rupees. That 30,000 rupee gap, that's the rent. That's what everyone is fighting for. Over a 30-year career with pension, the total value of this rent runs into crores. Research indicates that the total value of a government job, combining salary, security, status, and benefits, can be 10 times that of an equivalent private sector position. Rationally, aspirants are willing to invest significant time and money competing for this multiplier. But what does this cost at scale? Research by economist Kunal Mangal on Tamil Nadu found that nearly 80% of unemployed educated youth were voluntarily unemployed, preparing for government exams. The study calculated that the total opportunity cost, foregone wages of all aspirants, exceeded the total lifetime wage bill of the positions being offered. Let me repeat that. Society spends more on the selection process than the value of the jobs being selected. In states like Bihar, with the median age around 20 and millions locked in preparation, the opportunity cost has been estimated at nearly 20% of gross state domestic product, a staggering loss of productive capacity. This anxiety fuels a massive commercial ecosystem. According to industry reporting, the coaching sector is valued at over 50,000 crore rupees in 2024, projected to reach 1.3 lakh crore rupees by 2028. GST collections from coaching centers doubled between 2019 and 2024, confirming explosive growth even as actual government job creation stagnated. The industry operates on what economists call information asymmetry. Institutes market the success stories, the 0.1% who cleared, while rendering the 99.9% invisible. Fees range from 1.5 to 3 lakhs for comprehensive courses. In rural families, this often involves liquidating assets, selling land, taking gold loans, creating a debt trap that heightens pressure to succeed. Anthropologist Craig Jeffrey documented what he calls waithhood, a suspended state of being. In coaching hubs like Mukherjee Nagar, Aspirant becomes a distinct social identity, neither student nor worker. A liminal phase characterized by what Jeffrey calls time pass, disguised as tapasya. The culture valorizes struggle, cramped rooms, poor food, 14-hour study sessions as moral virtue. This narrative trap makes quitting extraordinarily difficult. Exiting the queue is framed as moral failure rather than pragmatic redirection. And here's where psychology compounds the problem. After 2 to 3 years of preparation, aspirants fall prey to what economists call the sunk cost fallacy. The reasoning, I've invested so much, I cannot quit now. This extends waithood from 2 years to 5 to 6 years, destroying the prime years when alternative skills could be developed. The convergence of financial debt, family pressure, and isolation has created a genuine crisis. According to NCRB data, over 13,000 student suicides occur annually. Research identifies the highest risk group, males aged 15 to 20, preparing for NEET, JEE, or UPSC. Coaching hubs have witnessed concentrated incidents that led the Supreme Court to comment on a suicide epidemic. I want to handle this sensitively. These aren't just statistics. These are boys barely out of childhood, carrying the weight of being future providers. The issue isn't aspiration itself. It's a system that concentrates pressure without adequate support structures. Now, before we move to solutions, let me address the skeptic, the common critique. Aren't these just lazy youth avoiding the hustle of the private sector, waiting for a comfortable government job instead of building something? Here's why that's wrong. This isn't laziness, it's hyper-rational risk calculation. Remember the math. A government job, even at Group D level, offers 30,000 rupees plus monthly, inflation indexed with pension. Total lifetime value, 2 to 3 crore rupees. A Tier 3 private sector job offers 12,000 to 15,000 rupees, no security, high termination risk. Lifetime value, uncertain, volatile. For someone from a family with no safety net, no land, no connections, no fallback, spending 2 to 3 years competing for a 0.3% chance at 3 crore rupees is mathematically defensible. The expected value calculation, when you factor in the disutility of exploitative private sector conditions, often favors the queue. The problem isn't the individuals, it's a labor market that makes queuing more rational than building. If this economic analysis has been useful so far, you'll appreciate episode 1 on the degree obsession. Same structural logic, different system. Link in the description. Here's something that will surprise you. A startup founder earning 15 lakh rupees per month will often lose, in the marriage market, to a government clerk earning 40,000 rupees. In India's matrimonial economy, the government job is the ultimate risk mitigation asset. Matrimonial advertisements reveal clear hierarchies. An IAS/IPS officer commands the highest premium. State civil servants follow. Public sector bank employees next. Here's what's striking. A high-earning private sector professional, even a startup founder, is often viewed as a risky asset. A government clerk earning 40,000 rupees is frequently preferred over a private executive earning 1 lakh rupees. The reasoning is financial logic applied to marriage. The clerk is a sovereign bond, zero default risk. The executive is a corporate bond, subject to market volatility. For a rural graduate from a family with no safety net, no land, no alternate income, no social connections, the private sector genuinely offers little. A starting salary of 10,000 to 15,000 rupees with 12-hour shifts, no contract, no benefits, potential for exploitation and arbitrary termination. In contrast, even a 1% chance at a government job, with its 35,000 rupees plus salary, housing allowance, and lifetime security, has higher expected value when adjusted for the disutility of private sector conditions. For such families, Government job pursuit isn't delusion. It's the only visible path to stable middle class status. But it becomes irrational when the aspirant has alternative high earning potential but ignores it due to social pressure. Multiple years have passed without meaningful progress. The preparation is driven by family expectation rather than genuine interest in public service. The opportunity cost exceeds what can be reasonably recovered. India's pattern has parallels elsewhere. China shared this obsession until the 1990s, when state-owned enterprise reforms laid off 34 million workers. That traumatic shock therapy forced cultural adaptation to private sector employment. But here's what's striking. Post-2020, as China's tech sector faced crackdowns and real estate instability, youth began lying flat, tang ping, retreating back to state jobs or opting out entirely. India has never experienced the shock therapy that broke China's iron rice bowl. The psychology remains intact here, and we risk mirroring China's current retreat, skipping the growth phase and going straight to the burnout. In Korea, government jobs are termed God's workplace. Youth spend years in goshewons, tiny study cubicles, preparing for civil service exams. The exam hell culture parallels India's. When Japan's asset bubble burst in the 1990s, companies protected existing employees by stopping new hiring. This created a lost generation of youth locked out of stable employment. India risks something similar, not because companies aren't hiring, but because youth are voluntarily withdrawing from the labor market to queue for state jobs. The result is the same, a generation locked out of productive skill accumulation. So what does someone stuck in this system actually do? Let me offer a framework, but I need you to be honest with yourself. This isn't generic advice. I'm going to give you specific frameworks for specific situations. Q. You've invested time and money. You may be making progress or you may be uncertain. The framework. 1. Set a hard deadline. Decide now, not after your next failure, how many attempts you'll make. 2 to 3 is reasonable. More requires exceptional justification. 2. Calculate your true cost. Actually, let's do this right now. Pause this video. Open your calculator. Take your monthly living cost. Add the private sector salary you could be earning right now. Multiply by 36 months. That number, likely 15 to 20 lakhs for most aspirants, is your entry ticket to this lottery. Now multiply your success probability. Be honest. If you're not in the top 10% of mock tests, it's under 1%. By the lifetime value of the job, 2 to 3 crore. Is the expected value positive for your specific situation? 3. Build parallel skills. Don't let exam preparation be your only investment. The discipline of UPSC preparation develops research skills, writing ability, and general knowledge. These translate to policy fellowships, journalism, content creation, research roles. 4. Evaluate your motivation honestly. Are you pursuing this because you genuinely want public service? Or because of family expectations, marriage market pressures, or because you don't know what else to do? Your reality. You've been in this for years. The sunk cost feels enormous. Quitting feels like admitting failure. The honest assessment. What you've spent cannot be recovered. The question is only, what maximizes value going forward? 1. Ignore sunk costs. They are irrelevant to future decisions. The years are gone whether you continue or not. 2. Assess probability realistically. If your scores aren't improving after 3 attempts, additional attempts are unlikely to change outcomes substantially. 3. Identify transferable skills. UPSC preparation develops valuable capabilities: analytical thinking, research, structured writing. These translate to think tanks, policy consulting, civil society organizations. 4. Consider the pivot dignity. Platforms like Craftshala have built programs specifically for UPSC aspirants pivoting to corporate roles. Public Policy Fellowships, Gandhi Fellowship, CM Fellowships, LAMP Fellowship offer government-adjacent work without the examination barrier. Your reality. You've invested in your child's preparation. You believe this path offers security. You may be uncertain whether to encourage continuation. The framework. 1. Understand the math. For every 1,000 who prepare seriously, fewer than 10 succeed in top-tier examinations. The probability is similar to lottery odds. 2. Set boundaries with love. Supporting for 2 to 3 years is reasonable. Supporting indefinitely enables the sunk cost trap. 3. Value all paths. A government job isn't the only path to security. PSU adjacent roles, stable private sector careers, skilled entrepreneurship. These offer dignity and stability too. 4. Watch for mental health signals. Isolation, withdrawal, excessive anxiety about results. These require attention. The shame of perceived failure drives genuine crises. You're contemplating whether to begin this journey. The framework. 1. Assess your genuine interest. Do you want to serve in public administration, or do you want security and status? 2. Evaluate your alternatives. Are you from a background with limited other options, or do you have skills that could develop value in other paths? 3. Understand the time cost. The average successful candidate takes 2 to 4 attempts. That's 3 to 5 years of your 20s. Is the expected value worth this investment for your specific situation? 4. Plan the exit. Before you enter, decide the conditions under which you'll exit. This prevents the sunk cost trap. Across patterns I've observed in research, those who navigate this landscape successfully share one quality: agency. They set boundaries. They build parallel skills. They evaluate honestly. They don't outsource their decision to family pressure or social expectation. The system has genuine structural problems, but your response to it remains within your control. We began by asking, what drives 2.5 crore people to compete for 90,000 positions? The evidence reveals a system in equilibrium. An equilibrium that's rational for individuals but damaging for the collective. Government jobs offer genuine value, security in a volatile economy, dignity that many private employers don't provide, pensions in a country with limited social safety nets. The pursuit is rational for those without alternatives. But it becomes a trap when extended beyond reasonable limits, when driven by social pressure rather than genuine interest, when opportunity costs exceed what can be recovered. This isn't a simple story of people are making bad choices. It's a story of structural incentives that make the choice individually rational, even when collectively costly. This analysis extends beyond exam preparation to a larger question. What does it mean when a society's most ambitious youth invest their prime years competing for positions in the state rather than creating value in the economy? Other economies face similar dynamics. Some, like China, experienced traumatic structural breaks that forced adaptation. Others, like South Korea, continue to struggle with similar patterns. India stands at a crossroads. The demographic dividend, a large young workforce, becomes a dividend only if that workforce is productively employed. When millions queue for security rather than building, the dividend inverts into burden. If there's one idea worth retaining, the queue is rational until it isn't. Know your deadline. The most successful navigators of this landscape, whether they ultimately clear exams or pivot to alternatives, are those who make active, bounded decisions rather than drifting indefinitely. The structural challenges are real, but pathways exist. For those with genuine public service interest and family support for bounded preparation, the pursuit can be meaningful. For those who've been in the queue too long, pivots to think tanks, policy fellowships, translatable corporate roles offer dignity without the examination barrier. For families, supporting with boundaries rather than enabling indefinitely serves everyone better. If you found this analysis useful, consider subscribing. We are building a series that examines India's systems with depth and honesty, the uncomfortable patterns and the pathways forward. And I want to hear from you. Are you in this queue? Have you pivoted successfully? What would you tell someone just starting? Your perspective matters. Next time on Build India, Class and Capital, the Invisible Walls, on how socioeconomic class, access to capital, gender and geography create invisible but powerful barriers to entrepreneurship and career success in India. See you next time.